Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, this comes from Newsweek.com. I Escaped the Children of God Cult at 15. Published September 18th, 2022. By Daniela Mestenik Young. I wanted to be free so badly I could taste it. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Dad's face was bright red, his breathing heavy, with asthma and anger. Then, before I could lose my nerve, I yelled the words that had been building for me for 9 years. I want to leave the family. The Children of God was founded in 1968 by Prophet David Berg, a failed 50-year-old preacher who finally found his calling by saving lost souls, searching for meaning. Among the hippies gathering in California, Berg saw these young people as sheep in need of a shepherd and began to corral them into his flock. All adults forsook their worldly possessions and dedicated their lives to Jesus, sharing and living together communally. They called themselves a family. We were God's army. Our mission, to prepare for the end of the world. Isn't it funny how so many of the cults are the same? Must be a conspiracy. And there's cute little Daniela Mestenik. That's so sad. Daniela Mestenik, young as a child, in the Children of God cult. Our lives were governed by our prophet's revelations, dreams, and whims. He lived in hiding, allegedly, sharing his beliefs in thousands of publications he called mole letters, as well as comic books, movies, and music produced by a central ring of his followers. They always have to have a way to distribute the propaganda. The children of God were the homegrown and unpaid talent. I'd been trained as a child actress, and I was trafficked to produce and sell religious videos across the globe. Berg started preaching about how much God loved sex. Isn't that great, you guys? Only the devil had demonized it. It's part of why I left the cult when I did. In about 5 months, I would have turned 16 and been considered an adult who was supposed to have sex widely without birth control. Religious prostitution began in 1974 and lasted until 1987, with attractive women becoming fishers of men, flirting and having sex with non-believers to hook followers and donations. The prophet taught my grandparents' generation that it was their sacred duty to raise sexually liberated children, more like sexually abused and exploited, and to protect ourselves from the outside world, the system, like the WOG world. We went into hiding, scattered around the world. Allegedly, none of these authorities can ever catch them, right? Entering the outside world. At 15 years old, I stepped down onto U.S. soil from a Greyhound bus, the last in a long series that had brought me from a cult compound deep in Mexico. Everything I owned fit into a small, battered suitcase. The only way of life I'd known had disappeared, and the big bad outside world came rushing in. My family had been in a cult for generations, believing to the core that the outside world was pure evil. The high school secretary was one of the first systemites I'd ever encountered, whom I wasn't trying to convert to our way of life. All I wanted now was for her to let me into hers. "I'm sorry, darling. We can't enroll you here. You don't exist." I had no scholastic or vaccination records of any kind, so I understood. But her explanation perfectly fit what the cult had always threatened would happen to backsliders. As I stood in that inner city high school, with 4,000 students milling about me, I had the thought that would plague me for decades. I'm from another planet. Like a spy, I'd have to find ways to fit in to disguise my differences, to not arouse any suspicions that I might be different from who I appeared to be on the outside. That would be easy enough. Without the family, I had no clue who I was. Putting on an act. Taught to be the best from birth and beaten if I stepped out of line, I was confident I could play any role required to survive. With my closest family members praying for me to fall so hard I'd have no choice but to come crawling back, I started acting for my life. My privilege of being white, blonde, and accentless helped me to pass unrecognized as a troubled teenager, alone in the margins of America. I lived with my sister, who had previously escaped the cult, in Houston, Texas. My sister's boyfriend convinced the state to create a plan to allow me to graduate high school in 2 years rather than 4, meaning I had to take a lot more classes than most seniors. I stumbled through this condensed version of high school and into college, where I graduated with honors, never asking myself what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was working hard enough to just be. Picking up the uniform of an American soldier after college didn't seem strange. I knew I'd be able to fit in. After the chaos of the outside world, I craved the structure of going back inside, of having someone tell me where to go and what to wear, of having brothers and sisters around me, reinforcing that our shared mission was the right one. Daniela Mestenik, young, on the day she was promoted to Captain Mestenik, young. So she enjoyed the structure of the army. Sometimes a colleague would ask me questions about myself, but I would rarely ever answer them. Would they even believe me? Do people realize that it's possible to become an adult without ever having been a child? How could I explain that, yes, I looked whole on the outside, but I felt my skin was just a thin bag holding the jagged pieces together? Letting people see the real me. A decade after leaving the family, I felt I couldn't keep up my act of normalcy. I wanted to just quit life altogether. In trying to find connection, I turned to a friend and army superior, and his words changed my life. "Daniela, you need to get over yourself. You aren't as different as you think you are." He was right. I had been running for too long, fighting every moment since I had left the cult, to feed myself, to get an education, to keep living, to succeed. But nothing I had ever done was good enough to convince me that I belonged, or that I could ever be normal. Despite the shrine of my accomplishments, I was breaking inside. I realized finally that I didn't want to be the perfect soldier, with nobody worrying if I ever made it back. I wanted people to know me. I wanted to see if maybe I wasn't different wasn't that different at all. I made new friends both in and out of my unit. I started saying I grew up in a cult. The first step in acknowledging the truth of who I was. I allowed people to see the real me and stopped hiding myself behind the sheen of perfection that I had used to cover my secrets and shame. A shame that had never been my fault. I came to life, and contrary to what the family had threatened, I found that I fit in all the right places, with all the right people. Maybe these people couldn't understand my life experiences, but I learned that they could understand me. Daniela Mestenik Young is a TEDx speaker, a cult survivor, a U.S. Army combat veteran, and author of Uncultured, a memoir. Learn more about her work at unculturedyourself.com. So I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.